Hey there! Welcome back to Color and Craft Haven, a little corner of calm where we can slow down, breathe, and add a little color to the day. Today we're diving into something that quietly shapes every page you color, every card you make, every journal spread you design, and every tiny clay mushroom you sculpt. We're talking about the psychology of color in handmade art, and why certain colors feel calming, dramatic, nostalgic, or even a little magical. If you've ever reached for a soft blue without thinking because you were stressed, or grabbed a deep crimson because you wanted something bold and powerful, you are already working with color psychology. Even if you didn't know the term, you felt it. Color isn't just visual, it's emotional, it's physical, it's memory-based. And when we're creating handmade art, especially in cozy, slow-living spaces, those color choices become part of the atmosphere we're building for ourselves. Let's start with calming colors. For many people, shades of blue, soft greens, lavender, muted neutrals, and gentle pastels feel soothing. But why? Part of it is biological. Blues and greens are strongly associated with nature, sky, water, forests. For most of human history, those colors meant safety. Blue sky meant no storm overhead. Green meant food, life, and fertile land. Our nervous systems learn to associate those tones with stability. So when you're coloring a page with soft sage leaves and dusty blue backgrounds, your body may subtly relax. Your heart rate can lower slightly. Your breathing may deepen. It's not dramatic, but it is real. That's one reason adult coloring books often feature florals, gardens, underwater scenes, and woodland creatures. The imagery and the color palette work together to create calm. But calm doesn't have to mean boring. Muted colors can feel layered, thoughtful, and cozy. Think of a page done in warm taupes, soft terracotta, cream, and even moss green. It doesn't shout. It hums. It feels like a quiet autumn afternoon with a mug of tea nearby. Now let's shift into dramatic colors. Dramatic doesn't mean chaotic. It means high contrast, saturation, and emotional intensity. Deep reds, jewel-toned purples, electric blues, saturated oranges. These colors activate us differently. Red, for example, is one of the most psychologically stimulating colors. It's associated with heat, urgency, passion, and power. It increases visual attention. That's why stop signs are red. That's why red lipstick makes a statement. That's why fantasy art often uses crimson cloaks and glowing red magic effects. When you choose bold red in your handmade art, you're creating a focal point. You're saying, look here. Purples, especially rich royal purples, have a long historical association with luxury and mysticism. That's not random. Historically, purple dye was rare and expensive. It became a symbol of status. Even today, deep violet can feel magical or a little elevated. If you've ever colored a dragon in deep amethyst or painted a clay potion bottle in shimmering indigo, you've tapped into that psychological association. Then there's black. Black can feel elegant, grounding, dramatic, or even comforting depending on the context. Paired with gold, it feels luxurious. Paired with bright neons, it feels edgy. Paired with muted neutrals, it can feel modern and minimal. Dramatic palettes often use contrast. Light against dark, warm against cool, saturated against neutral. Contrast creates visual tension, and tension creates interest. Now let's talk about nostalgia. Nostalgic colors tend to be softer, slightly muted, or sometimes faded. Think of vintage storybooks. Think of childhood craft supplies. Think of old photographs with a warm tint. Sepia tones, dusty rose, butter yellow, robin's egg blue, faded mint, soft peach. These colors often trigger memory, not because they're inherently nostalgic, but because they mirror the materials and lighting of earlier decades. If you grew up with crayons in the 90s, certain shades will feel emotionally familiar. If you grew up with storybooks printed in muted inks, you might gravitate towards gentle, slightly desaturated palettes. Nostalgia in handmade art is powerful because crafting itself is often tied to memory. Maybe you colored as a child. Maybe your grandmother quilted. Maybe you remember construction paper snowflakes taped up to windows. When you use nostalgic colors, you're not just choosing a palette. You're choosing a feeling of safety, simplicity, or warmth from another time. Here's where it gets really interesting. Color psychology isn't universal. Cultural background, personal history, and individual temperament all shape how we experience color. White symbolizes purity in some cultures, but mourning in others. Red can mean luck in one context and danger in another. So when we talk about calming or dramatic colors, we're talking about trends and tendencies, not hard rules. That's important for cozy creativity. Cozy creativity isn't about doing it right. It's about tuning into your own nervous system and asking, what do I need today? If you've had a long, overstimulating day, your hand might drift towards soft blue-grays and gentle eucalyptus greens. That's self-regulation through art. If you felt invisible or low energy, you might reach for hot pink, metallic gold, or bold teal. That's self-expression and reactivation. Color becomes a conversation between your inner state and your outer page. Now let's talk briefly about warm versus cool. Warm colors, reds and oranges and yellows, tend to feel energetic, social, and forward-moving. They visually advance, meaning they appear to come toward the viewer. That's why warm highlights can make elements pop. Cool colors, blues and greens and violets, tend to recede. They feel expansive, distant, atmospheric. That's why distant mountains are painted blue. It creates depth. When you're coloring fantasy landscapes, you can use that to your advantage. Warm tones for foreground mushrooms, cool tones for background mist. Your page suddenly feels dimensional, even though it's flat. Now let's explore saturation. Highly saturated colors are intense and lively. Desaturated colors, those softened with gray or their complementary color, feel quieter. If you're looking for cozy, try lowering the saturation. Instead of bright apple green, try olive. Instead of neon pink, try dusty rose. Instead of pure black, try charcoal. It softens the emotional volume of the piece. But if you want bold drama, increase that saturation. Let colors be unapologetically vivid. Let that dragon glow. Let that galaxy shimmer. There's also something to be said about repetition. When you repeat a color throughout a piece, it creates harmony. Even bold colors can feel balanced if they're echoed somewhere. A small pop of crimson in a floral crown might feel random, unless there's a matching crimson ribbon or a berry somewhere else. Harmony reduces visual stress. It helps the eye move comfortably across the page. For mindfulness seekers and art therapy enthusiasts, this matters. Coloring and crafting can regulate mood because they give your brain a contained world. Within that world, color choices create either stability or stimulation. When the palette is harmonious, your mind feels less chaotic. That's one reason limited palettes can feel so soothing. Choosing 3 to 5 colors and using variations of them, well, suddenly your page could feel cohesive, almost like it belongs to a storybook universe. Fantasy art lovers often intuitively understand this. Think about how certain fantasy worlds are dominated by specific palettes. Icy blues and silvers for winter realms, warm ambers and browns for rustic villages, jewel tones for enchanted cities. Palette builds atmosphere. Now let's gently address something many beginner artists worry about: What if I pick the wrong colors? Well, there is no wrong, only different emotional effects. If your page feels off, ask yourself what emotion it's giving. Is it louder than you intended? More chaotic? Too flat? Maybe too dark? Color adjustment is often easier than we think. Add a lighter highlight. Soften one area with a neutral. Introduce one repeating accent color to tie everything together. You're not fixing a mistake, you're adjusting a mood. And mood is fluid. On some days, cozy means pale creams and linen whites and soft brown ink. On other days, cozy means candlelit gold against deep midnight blue. Cozy isn't a color, it's a relationship between colors. For homebound creatives and slow-living enthusiasts, this becomes a quiet ritual. You choose colors intentionally. You watch how they interact. You let your nervous system respond. Even clay artists experience this. A pastel glaze on a small handmade bowl feels gentle and domestic. A high-gloss crimson gaze feels bold and statement-making. Same form, different emotional presence. Papercraft lovers see it too. A card made in muted florals feels sentimental. The same design in saturated jewel tones feels celebratory. So how can you use this intentionally? Before starting a project, pause. Ask, how do I want this piece to feel? Calming? Dramatic? Nostalgic? Grounded? Playful? Then choose a palette that supports that emotion. You don't need color theory charts, you just need awareness. If you want calming, lean into cool tones and lower saturation. If you want drama, increase contrast and saturation. If you want nostalgia, soften and warm the palette slightly. And remember, your body is an excellent guide. If you start coloring and something feels jarring, trust that. If a palette makes you breathe deeper, notice that. That's the beauty of handmade art. It's interactive. It responds to you as much as you shape it. In cozy creativity, we're not chasing perfection. We're cultivating atmosphere. And color is one of the gentlest, most powerful tools we have for doing that. Next time you sit down with your pencils, your markers, watercolors, or your clay, take a moment to notice the emotional weight of the colors in front of you. Notice which ones feel like a quiet afternoon, which ones feel like a thunderstorm, which ones feel like childhood summers. There's no right answer. There's only your experience and the soft, steady joy of bringing it onto the page. That's it for today's colorful time. Tell me in the comments which colors you reach for when you need calm versus when you want something bold and dramatic. Take care, stay creative, and I'll see you in the next one.